Welcome back to TinyBlueGames. My name is, of course, Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about MMORPGs in 2021. And today we've got more of a rant-style video. I know, super exciting, but it's going to be all about what is pay to win. And this is a subject that's been coming up a lot more, I'd say. In the last month, I've seen a lot of videos about it, and topics I can think of right off the top of my head are like New World and its potential cash shop and what that looks like, as well as more recently World of Warcraft Burning Crusade Classic and its monetization and potential WoW tokens that could come in maybe. So there's been a lot of videos about it. A lot of people have shared their thoughts on it. As someone who does a lot of MMO comparisons and has made lots of videos comparing cash shops and different MMOs, I thought I'd like to share my own thoughts on it. And right away, I'm going to say they might not be the same as your thoughts on it, and that's completely okay. If you do have your own thoughts, please add them to the comments below. Any kind of conversation about this that us MMO fans can have is good for everyone to kind of get that out in the air. So do share those comments, do listen to the video, see what my own thoughts are, but let's dive into the discussion. So the first part of this conversation is looking at the big picture, because I think this is really important whenever you have complex problems, to try and see both sides of the problem, because inevitably you're probably on one of the sides, and it's really difficult to understand all of the things that go into a solution without at all thinking of the other side. And I'm not saying anyone is narrow-minded or hasn't thought of the other side, but I think it's a good way to start this discussion. So let's start with our side. We are consumers, we play video games, we enjoy video games, and generally speaking, we want to pay as little as possible to enjoy those video games. I mean, if you were presented with the option today to lower your sub fee in whatever game you play from $15 to $10 without changing any of the service, you'd probably check the yes box to that. That's just how our society works, because we want more money for ourselves to buy more games to enjoy. That's how that works. The flip side of things, if you're the game, not the developers necessarily, but the actual game company, and that's a very important thing to kind of look at, that the developers, they're not the ones making these business choices. They're going to work like you and me go to work. They're trying to make the best product they can given their resources, and they are just getting paid wages that might be completely unrelated to the amount of profit the game company is making. The game company is trying to make the most amount of profit they can without giving more game away. And to bring our example full circle, if the game companies were offered the option to increase the price of a sub from $15 per month to $20 per month without losing any active subs, they would almost certainly check that yes box. So in a way, we're just as evil as each other. Now, where things get a little bit more complicated is when we know certain companies are making tremendous amounts of money and they're adding new monetization ways on top of existing monetization to make even more money from the same amount of players or the same product. You know, the World of Warcraft I'm playing today isn't really that different from the World of Warcraft I was playing 10 years ago. Some of us could argue it's a little bit worse in certain ways. Some of us could argue it's regurgitated if we're looking at the classic versions of the game, and yet there are way more ways to monetize us than there were in the past. I mean, we have the box price, we have subs, we now have WoW tokens, we now have store mounts. The ways that they can make money have increased, and the actual product itself has either stayed the same or maybe declined in some ways. And because of that, people do not feel good about that game anymore. I think WoW's, I don't mean to pick on WoW, but I think it makes a very good example, and it's going to be something we talk about specifically as we get into the Burning Crusade Classic token discussions. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But before we talk about World of Warcraft, I wanted to first talk about New World, because this issue actually came up first, and I think it's a bit more of an interesting problem, because New World, despite being attached to Amazon, is the first hopefully successful game to launch from Amazon Game Studios, which is in some regards its own separate entity. I mean, we've heard from developers that they need to prove that they are making a profit on their product and they can't just kind of piggyback off of Amazon forever, which, you know, is fair of most new projects. I mean, you don't want to just create something that's a financial loss. That doesn't make much sense in the business world. So in a lot of ways, New World has to be extremely careful. If they implement this monetization system improperly, they risk ruining everything because they don't have an established player base. They don't have millions of active subscribers who will literally keep paying monthly amounts of money no matter what happens to the game. And yes, you could argue people are leaving, but there's a certain amount of people who are just they're in it for the long time with World of Warcraft's game. So New World's in a very different situation. There's another part of this that's very different. New World is a buy-to-play game. It's actually a pretty cheap buy-to-play game, so it doesn't have a monthly sub fee. So once you've bought that game, you are going to get continued content from the game as long as it's running for that initial price. And that's very reminiscent of games like Guild Wars 2 and possibly other games. We don't really know if there's plans for DLC content or expansions, or at least I haven't heard if that's a plan. I assume they wouldn't announce that so soon. If someone knows about that, add it to the comments. But from what we understand, there's the buy-to-play price of the game, and then there's a cash shop on top, which is fairly common for buy-to-play games because there isn't that influx of money each month from a sub fee. So with that, it shouldn't come as a surprise that there's going to be a cash shop. I think most people expected that. I think in a world where so many sub games have cash shops as well, I think it's weird for people to be upset that there's a cash shop in a buy-to-play game. But people complain of cash shops even in free-to-play games, so we're just going to leave it at that. The bigger question, though, comes to what is pay to win in a cash shop. And this is the core of the New World problem. And let's paint the scene a little bit better. The way this started, there was a leak from the alpha preview of the game that talked about the cash shop and some of the items in it, specifically talking about the ability to buy boosters for rested XP, which people had an issue with. So first off, this information was not released in a way that New World wanted it to be released, which already put some shade on it and is not great for the company. So they're kind of on the defensive. The thing that New World has done well is instead of not dealing with the problem, they've since then released an article about it. They've released different posts about it, and they've even answered questions for a content creator about the problem as well. So they've kind of gone above and beyond in terms of this. And I got to give it to them that they're taking this seriously. They're listening and they're seeing the feedback. I mean, it was probably pretty hard not to hear it with some of the streamers and videos that were talking about it. But they're talking about it. And it's a test cash shop. I think that's the big thing that should be talked about as well. This is a cash shop that's supposed to be added to the alpha, to the beta, to test it. So essentially, it's doing exactly what they want. They're testing the waters to see what is allowable in the consumer's eyes and what is not allowable in the consumer's eyes. And we're kind of getting upset over the fact that they're testing it. Like, it's good that we're submitting our feedback. It's bad that maybe we're going overboard and saying, this is it, we're done, this game, like, this one decision has ruined absolutely everything, I don't trust them anymore, how could they do this? Yeah, so there's a fine line there. And before we dive any deeper into this, I wanted to give a shout out to the content creators who have been talking about this. Specifically, I've watched Kira TV. He does a really good job of presenting a lot of the facts, specifically with new MMO releases and the behind-the-scene work. Sir Medieval has been a great content creator for New World. And then Asmund Gold, I've always watched his take on things too, because he's got his voice. And I think talking about any of these content creators, they lend the voice to consumers. They allow consumers to get upset on a new level that forces companies to actually respond. And that's a power that, a lot of individual consumers didn't have back in the day, unless you got like actual media presence involved, which would be a lot harder. So a shout out to everyone who has made this the conversation it is, because I think it is really important. So are XP boosters, rest XP boosters, are they pay to win? I'm going to come out and say I don't think they're pay to win. I think pay to win is the most basic definition of it, is that it's something that makes you more powerful, and that you can't really acquire in any other way than paying. And that's a very, very closed definition, and makes pretty much anything on most games these days not pay to win. Because usually, if a game's at least somewhat decent, they make a way for you to earn it in game as well as paying for it in the store. And to be fair, there's some pretty crummy items that fit in that category. I mean, we can talk about loot boxes that you can earn currency in game to use as well as pay to use, but loot boxes still suck no matter what. So just by saying it's not pay to win does not mean it's a good thing. I think the bigger issue here, though, and this applies to the discussion with the WoW token we're going to have right after this, is that having these XP boosters devalues the progress that players are making naturally in the game. And that's one of the key fundamental enjoyable parts of MMORPGs, is going into a new world on a character and progressing skills that you wish you could progress in real life. I mean, if I could work on my great axe skills in real life, which I guess I could, but it wouldn't be very required or necessary. Like that's as a kid, that's what I always thought was so cool, is that you can train these skills that are super cool and super fun to use. But yeah, long story short, having rest XP boosters devalues the progress that people make naturally. And is that pay to win? No. Is it not fun? Kind of. And specifically depends on how much of a boost it is, if people can use them right off the bat, and how easy they are to gain in-game. Because if they're pretty easy to get in-game, and people are just able to get them as well, and not go overboard with them, I think that's fine. Like, if it's something that's gonna allow someone to boost from like 0 to max level in like 1/20th of the time, that's ridiculous. But if it's something that helps someone boost a little bit faster, and that can be earned in-game pretty easily, that's not a huge deal. So there's a lot of little details that we don't know. The one part of this that has been talked about a bit more is the idea of it being released right away when the game launches, because that's obviously when it would do the most damage. New World has come out and said that I think they're gonna not look at adding these until 2022, so I think a few months after release, which does allow for that race to world first, or whatever it is, that true sense of first progression to go through without this impacting anything. And I think that is a really smart decision. I think people are kind of looking at that like, okay, so they're going to release them eventually anyways. But honestly, I think that the biggest issue is that race, because no one is really going to care that much once absolutely everyone or almost everyone is max level. It doesn't matter that much for the stragglers that get left behind to be able to use these services, or for people to use it on their alts or something like that. It's not as big of a deal. I mean, you can look at a lot of other games. I'm thinking of Guild Wars 2 in particular. There's definitely XP boosters that you can buy on the gem store in Guild Wars 2. You can earn them in game as well. I have a bunch of them in my bags that don't get used because XP doesn't really matter that much in that game for someone who's a veteran player. I have so many tomes of knowledge which grant a free level. You earn them from like things like PvP and stuff. I have banks full of them. I could take like I would not be surprised if I could level up 10 new characters to max level instantly with the amount of XP tokens I have, and people just, it doesn't matter. So having those on the Guild Wars 2 cash store doesn't impact anything. So it really depends on how valuable the XP is. Because if it is at the launch of the game, if it is something that actually really increases the leveling speed, that is a big issue. If it's not, it's not. So I caution people to kind of wait and see. And obviously during the testing, hopefully we will see how much of an impact it has. And once we have that information, that's when decisions should be made. All this to say though, it's good that the conversation was started early so that New World can actually start thinking things through and not just slipping things in. And I'm sure the next thing that they add to the cash shop that's a little bit questionable, they're going to think about a lot more before putting it in. Okay, so next I want to talk about the Burning Crusade token. WoW token, I guess. And to be clear, this is definitely not anything at all confirmed. This is like an image that's been found somewhere. It's not even like data mined or anything like that for specifically the NA servers, and it could just be used for different regions, yada yada yada. It's just kind of the cherry on top of the monetization sundae that is World of Warcraft. And I think that's really the big problem here, because as I mentioned at the start of this video, contrasting these two different scenarios, we have New World, which it's the first MMO launching, looking to make its way into this world. We have World of Warcraft, the cash cow that we know is making tons of money and has continued to make tons of money. And then we have World of Warcraft Classic, which has increased the number of subs, active subs in World of Warcraft as well. So we have a very financially successful game. And with that, we know that things that are being added to monetize the game are being done so just to squeeze more money out of the active player base. I mean, let's be honest, adding store mounts, adding different, ways to buy services in the game generally isn't bringing new players into the game. It's not adding a ton of value for a lot of people. The WoW token is the one service that could add some value to people. You can look at people who really don't want to pay the sub fee, and who now have a way to essentially play WoW as a buy-to-play game. I am one of those people, so I feel like I do have a little bit of a conversation about this, where I do enjoy the WoW token in some regards. For instance, in BFA, for all of the good that came from that expansion, I was able to make a ton of gold selling. What was it that I sold? I think it was an alchemist. It was for the war tables that you had a chance to bring back herbs. It was this little item that would sell for 100K on the auction house for some reason. And it was super profitable to make at the start of the game because people thought that they were going to be worth a ton, and I don't think they were, but I sold them like hotcakes. And I made, $1 million or 2 million gold. And with that, I didn't have to pay my sub fee throughout a lot of BFA, which was great. And I really enjoyed it. And I know what you're thinking right away. If you're looking at time spent for making gold, making real world money, it's generally not efficient to do that. But I like to save as much as I can. And it felt nice not to pay for WoW and play WoW. So I think it's kind of cool. That being said, if we look back at our initial conversation of what is pay to win, I would argue that the WoW token is way more pay to win than a XP booster. A WoW token is something that allows people to pay real world money to get in-game gold. With in-game gold in WoW, you can buy a lot of power. You can't buy power that no one can earn in-game, and you can't buy the absolute maximum amount of power, but you can buy a lot of power. And whenever that's the case, something becomes more pay to win. So I'm confidently saying that the WoW token is more pay to win. Now, the other part of this, and this is the very specific to classic WoW scenario, is that classic Burning Crusade didn't have WoW tokens. So there's no place for WoW tokens to be added to the Burning Crusade. However, they've already done a few things that have bothered a lot of people, such as adding these mounts and stuff like that, and these boosts, which were not there. So there is already kind of a divergent from the pureness of the game. And we've, you can go all the way back to the philosophy of, if they weren't going to change anything, or if they were going to fix bugs that were in the game and improve the game, those are changes, but these are very specific changes to increase the monetization of the players who go through that content. And it's kind of crazy when you take a step back and you think they're essentially selling the same product a second time while also adding additional monetization. It's just, if any other company in the world tried to do that, I don't know. I don't know how that would make sense. But they have such power that they're able to do it. You know, they're going to have some people who might not come back for this or that. They have some people who are going to quit. If this WoW token is real and is added to Burning Crusade Classic, some people will leave. Not nearly enough people will leave for it to be a bad decision for them, unfortunately. And I'm not here saying that it should go in. I'm just saying they have that much power that it becomes really difficult. And this all comes back to my appreciation of people like Asmongold, of Kira TV, and all these other content creators who are bringing the fight to New World at the start. They're setting the line in the sand about what's right and what's wrong. If this is something that had gone on, and it is something that is going on in WoW. There's people in WoW like Asmongold who've been fighting this fight for a long time with mounts in regular retail WoW. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying it's really good that it's starting right away in New World, and I'm just very appreciative of this community. All right, so before this video becomes too long of a rant, let's do a quick summary of where we are. I think that the WoW token is more pay to win than the experience boosters in New World. I think that the experience boosters in the New World cash shop are potentially a much bigger issue for New World than the WoW tokens being added to Burning Crusade Classic. I think that the boosters in New World will have a bigger impact on the game's success than if WoW added the WoW tokens to Burning Crusade, which is a really sad statement in itself, but I think that's the truth. Do I think that they will add the WoW tokens to Burning Crusade Classic? I do not think so. I think these are for a different region, and I think that people are getting upset over nothing. That being said, they have added some stuff already that is not great, and I think that they shouldn't have added it because it does take away from people's enjoyment of the game. I mean, it's making the game, the product, the service worse, and people are paying the same or more, which is bad. So I think that's for sure true. I do think that New World will launch with experience boosters of some sort. I think that there will be other quality of life things that will be added, and people will look at it as, you know, these things that the game could have just developed to not have these issues in their game, but they've put them there so they can sell a solution. Yes, I think there's going to be those things because at the end of the day, New World is buy to play. New World needs to make money after it launches, and to a certain extent, there needs to be these things. Every game that has a similar model, like I keep thinking of Guild Wars 2, but Elder Scrolls Online is kind of a clear example as well, does have these quality of life services. You can argue that the game launched and they later on realized that people were going to want enough bag space to like fit the items, but I don't think that's the case. I think the game knew what it was doing from the start in both of those situations, and they are trying to make money because they're a company. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this more ranty style video, and more than anything, hopefully you share your own thoughts in the comments below, because I'm sure people have different thoughts, you know, depending on what game you play mainly, where you come from, you're going to have different thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear them in the comments below. If you could toss the video a like, it really does help with the YouTube algorithm, and if you've listened this long, that's already a huge help as well. And consider subscribing for more MMO related content. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.